Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Wednesday here on the Pagan Perspective. I'm your host, Eric, and this week we are talking about making and disposing of offerings. So, very first off, I would like to apologize for my current state of being. I am ill, but I wanted to bring this to you and let you guys know kind of how I felt about the offerings subject that we've been doing this week. If you're having a hard time understanding me, it's because I have a pretty awful head and chest cold that I've had since last Friday, and I'm still gonna try and get this through. So if there are jumps in here, it's because I'm cutting out as many of the coughs and sneezes and snifflingness that I can. So I apologize for that. So the first of two questions that we have this week are: how do you handle offerings to the gods, spirits, ancestors, and so forth? And furthermore, how do you properly handle disposing of offerings in a proper and respectful manner? Now, where I differ on this than most of the other hosts is I believe an offering is something that you offer to the gods or the ancestors or the land wights or the spirits or whatever it is you're offering it to that you then don't get back. It's a sacrifice. An offering is a sacrifice, whether it's burnt offerings or buried offerings or left to nature offerings. The two or three ways that I usually do this is one, through um, libations and pouring those libations out on the ground, and that qualifies with both food and drink. Um, Generally speaking, if it is something that nature will take, if I am making offerings to the land wights and the outdwellers, which is a very Celtic uh, kind of thing, where you appease the outdwellers, and that is all of those things that are, what you might consider uh, not benevolent, the things that are not there to help you. Those things need to be appeased sometimes in the Celtic tradition. In the Norse tradition, the group that I've been working with on very rare occasion have a tendency to offer milk and bread and honey to the Jotun and the outdwellers and all of the spirits that we don't want in our ceremony or in our ritual. That is what we do, is bread and milk and honey, and we just take it out in a bowl and set it outside of what we are considering our ritual space, and we leave it there for the entirety of the ritual, and then after the ritual we then spread it out outside somewhere for nature to take. When it comes to the gods and goddesses and the spirits that we want to have, you know, with us in our ritual, what we do then is we prepare them a plate of food, or we bring offerings specifically for them, and we put it in the fire. Unless that is inappropriate, in which case we do what we feel is appropriate. If it were food for the ancestors, say at Samhain, what we would do is prepare a plate of food, leave an empty seat with the full plate of food at the feast table, so that then the ancestors can come and take that place. When it is all said and done and our feast is over, what we do is then take that plate full of food and bury the food outside, say in the backyard, so that it can go back to the earth, where many of us feel the ancestors' bodies return to. We also return that food to them so that they can be closer to it and so that they can have access to that. When it comes to uh, ritual offerings to the god and goddess, or the universe, as it were, what we do is we take things like write poetry, or any other offering that we see fit, oil, um, oil, alcohol, whatever we feel is appropriate for the offering, and we will quite literally dump it into our ritual fire. One of the most amazing things that I've ever seen is sometimes jewelry does get sacrificed, and I have no problem with that. I know Kara thinks it's a little wasteful, and yeah, I suppose it could be. But it's one of those things that if you do not hold something precious, and this is my opinion, if you do not hold something precious that you are sacrificing or that you are offering, if your offering has no sacrifice to it whatsoever, then I feel it's not a full offering, because it's one of those things where I understand being conservative with your resources, but when it comes down to making an offering that is there then powerful and sacrificial, I, in my opinion, should not have access to that thing again unless I can recreate it, or unless I put in the energy and the effort to create something like it again. I have offered sets of runes to the fire, and I have offered jewelry to the fire, and original poetry to the fire that I then have never been able to recreate because it was the only copy, and I wrote it specifically to offer up to the gods, more specifically the gods of inspiration, things like that. But those are offerings that I find appropriate. And one of the amazing things about offering many of these things to the fire, including the runes that I usually do, I try to make sure that they're not going to leave something behind. I don't offer stone runes to a fire. I will specifically make them out of wood so that I can then offer them to the fire, and that energy is taken up by the universe or by the god and goddesses. And just make it so that the time and the effort and the energy and the sacrifice that I put of myself into the item that I then add to the fire, is the intent is understood. So that is one of my favorite ways is burnt offerings. I've never been able to recover any jewelry parts whatsoever. Somehow, I don't know how it works, but in our ritual fires, which are usually just in a small fire pit sized fireplace, usually about 3 feet by 3 feet, um, all of the jewelry that has ever been put into the fire has all been completely consumed, and there's nothing left. So I find that absolutely proof to me that that's not a bad thing. The next part is, let's see, from Linnifer Ledopo. I'm sorry about the name, I'm terrible with pronunciations. I wanted to know, could we explain how to properly pick a flower or other kind of plant? They feel kind of apprehensive. They want to know if offering stones, which is something that I've only recently been introduced to, I'm not particularly a fan of. We here in Salt Lake do a Greenwich ceremony, and it's a long and not really complicated but interesting process. One of the things we do is collect greenery to bring the Greenwich together and build her. Well, this is one example of some of the fantastic things I have learned about choosing greenery and asking permission and whatnot. And that's basically it right there, is asking permission openly and willingly and consciously, asking permission of the plant when it comes to things like trees and shrubs and sagebush and everything else. It is something you can walk up, put your hand on the plant, and you don't have to do it out loud if you're not comfortable with that. Usually I do it in my mind, and accepting any answer that I get from the plant. If I walk up to a sagebrush and I brush my hand over the leaves and say, "Is there anything that you would be willing to let me take?" and I get a big fat emphatic no, I move on to another plant, and I just, oh, okay, well, thank you. Sometimes when it comes down to gathering greenery or picking a flower or taking part of a plant or taking the whole plant, is the plant will sometimes be more willing to go with you if you express your intent. Now, the only time that I personally feel that it would be disrespectful to any plant, flower, or living being whatsoever is if you ask its permission and it says yes, knowing your intent, and then you never fulfill that intent. That, I feel, is a little disrespectful. But if you were to go to a flower and say, I would like to take you with me to be part of my ritual, would you be willing to do that? And it says yes, and then you take it, and then you don't use it as part of your ritual, I would feel that that's a little disrespectful. But as long as you go through the process to ask the permission, and then, if you feel like you should leave something behind, but you don't have something to leave behind, I would say that, just make mental note to, one, use the plant in the intended purpose, and try to get back to leave something if you have, if you later on then have something that you can give. Debts can be repaid after the fact, because that's why they're debts as opposed to costs. Anyhow, I just wanted to get this video out. I hope you guys enjoyed this information. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to post them in the comments section below. But thank you for watching, everybody, and of course, until next time, Odin be with you.